just going to do a last shout out to the students online. If you are online right now, please make sure your cameras are turned on so I can verify your identity, just to make sure that you are a student and not anybody else. Once I verify your identity, you can turn off your web cameras when I start the class. So just make sure your web cameras are turned on. I'm just checking out that you are a student and not like some random fellow trying to join the class for fun. Let me see. Okay, right. So we're gonna start now. Right. So let me go ahead and start the class now. There's still like students coming, sorry. Okay. There's a Tommy. Can you make sure your web camera is turned on so I can verify that you are a student before we start the class? Hi. Let me see. Sorry, Tommy, can you position yourself so I can see you from the web camera? Look like a student or not? Yeah, okay, this is a student. Okay, right, so that's fine. Take a seat, just bring out a chair. If a chair is blocking you, bring down my ground, so you can bring down the chairs. So that it's a very long. Remember to do your safe entry. So let's end the okay, right. I'm going to start. So I don't know whether you all can see my screen from here. If you all see anybody start, and if you're waiting, let me know because I won't be paying so much attention to the screen when I start my class. Right. So I'm gonna go ahead and start now. Right. Then today's masterclass, okay, is actually a supplement class, right? For those of you who are not an ETG student, and if you're wondering what is the supplement class, a supplement class is not a regular weekly class. Okay, it's not our weekly regular tuition class. What is a supplement class? Supplement class is an hour long, usually, not 2 hours long. Our weekly classes are 2 hours long. The supplement class is usually an hour long. It is included for all students, for our students. Sometimes we do these supplement classes for external students like some of you who are here today to try our lessons. Sometimes we open up these supplement classes. Okay. When do we do a supplement class? Like for example, this week's lesson is actually on SOL, and I feel that the lesson is very content heavy. So when I feel that the lesson is very content heavy, and then I feel that you will benefit from being able to do some application, like it can be in form of essay practice. I ask you to come in, you do an essay practice. I ask you to come in and do a case study practice. Then we go through the essay, we go through the case study. Or if there is a specific framework that I feel that I can teach you to make use of to answer exam questions, and that we will, for that specific week, we will conduct what we call a supplement class. Okay, so supplement classes are included for all our students, and students actually don't pay extra for these supplement classes, right? Okay, so what actually are we learning today? Right? Are there any J1 students in class today? If you're J1, you might feel a little bit lost, especially if you're J1 attending. Not that you can't attend, but you might feel a bit lost because you wouldn't know what's going on. Okay, because at this point, if you're J2, you should have already covered SOL in school. You should already cover SOL in school. So what I'm teaching you, it will make quite a lot of sense to you. Okay, if you're J1, then you're attending this, that's fine, but I don't think this is the best lesson to try out. We should try next week's lesson on rational decision making. Okay, next week's J1 class is on rational decision making. So we are starting our first physical class for J1 next week already. Okay, which is on Saturday. Okay, so what exactly are we learning today? I'm going to teach you something, a framework. What is this framework? With this framework, you will be able to tackle most exam questions relating to standard of living. So it's like you use this one framework, you can apply to, like, I would say a good 60% of the exam questions that test you on standard of living. Okay, when I say exam questions, I mean the for case study, the higher order questions that are 8 marks and above, and essay questions 15 or 25 mark questions. Okay, so now you cannot say I want to do application without having built some content. So there's no way you can do application when you have not yet go in and do some content reading and understanding of the content. So before you can actually even make use of today's framework, okay, there are some raw materials. So you want to cook a dish, right? I'm teaching you how to cook a dish. Let's say, for example, if we use a cooking as an analogy, today I'll say I want to teach you how to cook a dish. Then you say, okay, yeah, I'm going to learn, I'm going to try. Then after that, so you say, okay, so you prepare these ingredients. Then you say that, so I'm going to teach you now the steps. Then you learn the steps, but you don't have the ingredients. Then you can't try out. Then you can't apply. So you need the basic ingredients to actually cook the dish, right? So I will expect that you should by now know two of these things. Okay, maybe the first one more than the second one. All right, the first one will be the different economic indicators. Okay, when I say different economic indicators, I mean things like real GDP, GDP per capita, real GDP per capita, GDP per capita in PPP terms, okay, and GNP, the difference between GDP and GNP. I expect you to already know these different indicators. What do they represent? What do they mean? How do you define them? These are like basic definitions and understanding that you should already know by now. Of course, if you don't really know by now, then of course you can go and study lah, right? Or join our tuition classes and do some catching up. Okay, that's the first thing that which I expect at this juncture every single student should be familiar with already. Now, unfortunately, right, if you have not been paying attention in class, in school, okay, then you need to go and catch up on this first before you can apply any of these things that we're talking about. If not, you'll still be very lost. You will not be able to do any form of application. The second thing, which I would say that maybe 75% of the students will not be ready, will be that you probably don't have statistics of major world economies. When I say major economies, I mean countries like United States, countries like China. Okay, and of course your own economy you must be very very familiar with. Everything to do with Singapore you need to know. You cannot say I don't know anything about Singapore. You need to know almost everything there is to know about Singapore's economy. That is the very basic. Okay, so whenever you're reading the news, okay, and you see anything that is Singapore economy related, please read, please understand. Okay, now so those are some of the key things you need to know before we can even start doing some application for today. Now, if you want to, you can take a picture of this because I'm not handing out any notes today. For our students, ETG students, the slides will be on the LMS, so you don't have to worry. The slides is going to be on the LMS. For those of you who are not our students and you want to take a picture of the framework, you can. Okay, you want to take a picture now for the students online, you can go ahead and do so. But I'm going to pause to let you take some time to actually take a photo of the framework. Okay. Now, basically, if you understand how this framework works, econs? Yeah, this is just this. Anyway, right, so if you take a look at this framework, right, this is basically all there is that we're covering in this class. I'm telling you, essentially, most of the exam questions that you're seeing, so when I say most, I say 60% just now. 60% of the exam questions that you're going to see, you can adopt this framework. You will be able to adopt this framework, right? You can trust me on this. There will be at least once, at least minimally one time, that you'll be able to use this framework in an exam throughout your entire JC life. So one fine day, when you're doing an SQL question, you can think, hey, does this framework apply? If this framework apply, you try to do it, I think you score pretty decent for that specific exam question. Okay, so I'm going to teach you this framework today. Okay, so let's go ahead and start now. So I'm going in this order, just so you know. Yeah, I'm going in this order. I'll move from here, then to here, then I'll branch out to here. After I finish this entire branch, then I'll go to here, and here, then go down, and then we end. That's the motion that we're moving. So we are actually following this framework. Okay, we're actually going through this framework. Now, so when you see an SOL question, okay, the most common types of SOL questions in which this framework will be applicable for, they'll be asking you to do two things. One of the following two things. Okay, what is one of the following two things? Number one, you do a temporal comparison mark of SOL. What is a temporal comparison? Temporal and spatial is just a tumor way of saying time and space. Time and space. Very, very easy. It's not anything that's very, very complex. Time and space. You do a time-based comparison or do a space-based comparison. Okay, but the funny thing is that I noticed that some students don't even know that there is this difference. that you can be asked a question that is time-based, or you can be asked a question that is space-based, right? And then you're confused between the two, then you get actually pretty confused. So you need to first ask yourself, hey, is the exam asking me a time-based question or a space-based question? Because you typically freeze the other thing. You freeze the other thing, okay, when you're doing either or. So if you are doing a time thing, then you're freezing the space. If you're doing a space thing, you're freezing the time. You don't usually do both at the same time. I'm not saying it's impossible. I once saw it in the school exam question, they test both at the same time. But that one is trying to kill you lah. So that one is quite rare. They're doing both time and space, but in most cases, just one of the two. Okay, if I am doing a temporal-based comparison, what I'm doing is that I'm giving you specific economic data and asking you, hey, I give you this data. You use this data, you tell me this country, the people are there in this country, are they better off or are they worse off? Okay, and we covered this in our class this week, right? For the ETG students who have already attended this week's class, the last class for the week is later on at 1 p.m. But some of you already attended the class, you will know that this was the question that we covered in class this week, which is discuss whether a negative 5.8% growth in 2020 for Singapore meant that our residents saw a worsening of the SOL. That was the question that we covered in class. Okay, so but that is actually the time-based comparison. We were dealing with a very specific question this week. So now we are like zooming out. For the students, for those who are my students, we are zooming out now. We are zooming out to see, okay, if you don't look at a specific question, if you look at generic questions, how do we use a framework to deal with the generic? Okay, right, so there's a time-based comparison. We can also do a space-based comparison. If we want to look at space, we freeze the time. We don't care about the time. We look at a specific point in time. We're not comparing time. We're comparing space. Comparing space means, hey, let's look at specifically in the year 2020 means we don't compare with another year. We are looking at only the year 2020. In the year 2020, which country has higher SOL? Is it going to be US or is it going to be Singapore? Hey, this question is going to be interesting. This specific one. This question, the next one, which we have not covered in my class yet. That one is going to be interesting. In year 2020, okay, Singapore's GDP was this and US GDP was this. Who had better SOL? Okay, that is a question that is actually pretty complex and pretty fun to actually address. For me, I would say for sure guarantee top Singapore. Whereas Singapore is a better place to be in 2020. Heck, Singapore is still a better place to be in 2021, right? Okay, so they give you GDP data for two countries, and then they ask you, hey, just use this GDP data. Tell me who's better off. That is a space-based kind of comparison. So the first thing that you gotta ask, well, what are we asking? Time-based or space-based? You first know that. You don't know that, you can't start. Know that first, okay? Right? Once you know that really, then you always go with the same approach. You go with the same approach. You know that SOL, I can cover material, I can cover non-material. The standard of living, I can either cover material standard of living or cover non-material standard of living. I'll always cover both. And I'll always cover both comprehensively. And I'll always want to tackle one before moving on to the other. You don't like jump into material SOL first, I talk a bit, then after I talk about non-material SOL. You like come to a complete conclusion for one segment first. Then you move on to the other. So you always, okay, you point in the introduction, hey, I'm going to talk about what happened with material SOL, and I'm going to talk about non-material SOL. But then when you move on to one, you make sure you close the case first before you move on to the other one. Okay, so you highlight that, hey, I'm going to look at material SOL, I'm going to look at non-material SOL, but I will start first with material SOL. I will always start first with material SOL. If you're wondering why you start first with material SOL, because it's easier. Material SOL is easier. It's actually pretty straightforward most of the time for material SOL. Okay, when we look at material SOL, right, we want to ask, because what the exam question is asking is usually, so they give you a GDP per capita data. They ask you, hey, this GDP per capita data, okay, tell me using the GDP per capita data, did citizens in this country do better or did they do worse? Or they give you GDP per capita of two countries, hey, whose citizens are doing better? Okay, so they say, use this GDP per capita, tell me, do a comparison for me, time-based comparison or space-based comparison, and then we will use the indicator and say, okay, so the economic indicator being GDP per capita. So what does GDP per capita tell us about material SOL? And how is it possible that the GDP per capita can give us any understanding of material as well? And usually the understanding is very easy. If you are doing a space-based comparison, right, whoever has a higher GDP per capita, we assume that they have more purchasing power. You have more purchasing power, you can buy more things. You can buy more things material-wise, you're better off. That is a space-based comparison. Time-based comparison is your GDP per capita this year higher than previous years? In other words, do you experience economic growth, positive economic growth? If the answer is yes, then in general, we expect that people have more purchasing power, then your material as well would have improved. Okay, so that we say what we can say that we know in theory first. These are things that we know in theory. There is nothing applied for it. These are theoretical stuff that we already know, that we can say. Higher GDP per capita, we're doing better lah. Okay, higher GDP per capita means this country is better than that country lah. That's what we can say. Okay, now the difficult part is not about the theory. The difficult part is the attacking of the premise of those assumptions that you've made. Look, we've made some assumptions just now. What are the assumptions we made? If we were doing a space-based comparison, we are saying that, okay, just because this country has a high GDP per capita, these people in this country can buy more things than these people in the other country. That is the assumption that we're making. And if we're doing a time-based comparison, we're saying that just because we made more money this year, material-wise, we are better off this year compared to last year. Hey, are there limitations to those assumptions that were made? And you know what? A large part of the essay, I would say maybe even 2 to 3 paragraphs, is used to attack the premise of those assumptions like, hey, rubbish lah, how can it be? So easy, man, just like these two numbers alone, then you can say the citizens were better off this year versus last year. Just using these two numbers, you can say that the citizens in country A are better off than citizens in country B. Then we say, no, we can't say that. Okay, we're going to challenge those assumptions, right? And then you're going to like deal with at least 3 of those things there. You know, I listed a few. There's actually more, but I listed a few. Yeah, deal with at least 3 of those things there. Okay, so you're going to say, hey, the GDP, if it's GDP per capita, then you don't need to account for population change, because if it's per capita, population change has already been accounted for, then we don't care. Then you got to ask yourself, hey, the GDP per capita, is it in real terms or nominal terms? Because nominal terms haven't count inflation. If you haven't count inflation, what you think became more expensive? These two are a bit amateurish level one. These first two, like schools test you on this, then they don't have much confidence in you. So they typically don't test you on the first two. Those two too easy already. So they usually test you on the following 3. The next 3 are the more difficult things to think about. Like if you're comparing between 2 countries, right? Okay, usually you use a common currency. You know how to compare, and the common currency is US dollar. Then that makes it a bit unfair already, because the 2 different countries could have appreciated or depreciated against the US dollar for reasons not related to the economic performance. Then how? Then the numbers are not accurate already, because you're measuring it in a common currency, and that common currency might not be favorable for one specific country than the other. The other one is that wow, one country has higher GDP per capita than the other country. So what? If you attended my class this week, I was saying that, hey, if you do a GDP per capita check, you'll find that the Swiss, right? Swiss, they earn about USD 25,000 more than the average Swiss earn 25,000 more than the average Singaporean. But can you believe it? The average Singaporean has more purchasing power than the average Swiss. Why? That's because the cost of living differs. I was sharing in class that I was last in Switzerland in 2011. I bought a McChicken meal, no upsize. No upsize McChicken meal, $20 Sing. McDonald's McChicken meal, no upsize, $20 Sing. At that point in Singapore, McChicken meal was $5. So it's 4 times the price. So if purchasing power is not accounted for, the cost of living is not accounted for, how is it a fair comparison? Why are we not challenging those assumptions? And the last thing is that if we use GDP per capita, that is the concept of averaging. Because we take the total income earned by the entire country, we divide it by the total population, that is the concept of average. But average, sometimes a poor indicator, because what you're trying to do to understand SRO is you're saying that, oh, if GDP per capita is this, we are making an assumption that the average person, the most ordinary fella in the country earns this amount of money. Yeah, but that's not a fair thing to say, because you have income inequality as an issue. Some countries have very high income inequality. Okay? So I say, hey, if income inequality is an issue, we got a ton of millionaires in this country, there's a huge rich poor divide. Then how can this number be representative of the most ordinary person? So you say, hey, you look at all these things, is this a fair thing to say? Then you realize that why you spend more time challenging what you say than actually saying it. Hey, you might spend one paragraph talking about, oh, so if this based on GDP per capita figure, I think that SOL is better off, okay, than previously, or SOL is better off than the other country. Then, but you spend 3 or 4 paragraphs tackling that, like saying, whacking that and saying, no, 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 no. I think we better consider what we just said. How true are things that we've said? Okay. Now, so the last thing, okay, the last thing that we'll do before we conclude our attacking is to say that, hey, if we were comparing between two countries, if one country is very big, then one country is very small. I give you an example. If you want to compare China versus United States, sorry, China versus Singapore, then that's not a very fair comparison anymore. Singapore, how small? They have 5 million population. China, how big? 1 billion plus population. You want to collect income data on Singaporeans, how easy can that be? That is a very easy thing to do. Because we're a very small country. You want to know how much each person is earning, it's very easy to find out. You want to know how much each person is earning in China every single year. Wow, that one a bit tough. What if the data is incomplete? What if the data is inaccurate? Is it even fair to do such comparison? So you are like challenging all of these assumptions that you've made to say that, hey, wow, no, I'm not very confident about what I say. But you know what? Writing the econ essay is about that. It's about saying what you know and then saying what you don't know. Okay, what you're not certain about, what you know, what you're not certain about, and what you don't know. Okay, you are supposed to write these things. Right? That's forming part of your evaluation. Okay, right. So that's next. Then after that, again, also evaluating. If you feel that, wow, the indicator is terrible, no? Like, wow, the indicator is really terrible. Like the indicator is like nominal GDP per capita. Right, then you feel like, wow, this is a terrible indicator. Then you say, okay, I will prefer this. I'll prefer GDP per capita in purchasing power parity terms, PPP terms, because at least that indicator has already accounted for the differences in purchasing power across different countries. And I say that this is a better indicator, and I'm saying what? So you present an alternative that forms part of the evaluation. So I say, hey, if you want me to tell you better about materials as well, at least give me this indicator lah. Then you say that. You can say that. You can say that. And if you want to ask me, if you want to find out, right, the change in SOL one year to another, what I will ask for median wage change. Yeah, median wage, you know the concept of median wage, right? Median wage is like 50th percentile. You instead of looking at the average figure, you look at the 50th percentile figure. Okay? So that is something that we can present as an alternative. Okay, remember I said just now, only when you are satisfied, then you can say everything there is to be said about one section, material SOL, then only should you move on to the next section, which will be about non-material SOL. Okay? Now, at this point, I just don't want you to feel a disconnect, so I'm going to bring you back to the framework to show you what we have done and what we're going to do next, so that you see how we are moving through the framework, right? So going back to see how we're moving through the framework. See here? Here is that we are trying to figure out what the question is to begin with. Is it a spatial thing? Is it a temporal thing? We are asking that. And what economic indicator are we using to make an analysis for? Then after we move on, material as well, which is what we have covered so far. So we say material as well. This key economic indicator, what does it tell us about material as well? What do we know in theory? What we can say in theory that is not in the applied sense yet. Then what we do is that after that, we challenge those assumptions. We say, hey, what are the problems associated with me saying that statement? Those issues that I state, at least 3 of those issues. Okay, how unreasonable I might have been in making those assumptions. I state 3 of those unreasonable things. Then I move on. Then I move on to say, okay, there are a lot of things that I still don't know. If you want me to give a better answer about SOL for material wise, please allow me to introduce you to these other indicators that I would prefer to use instead of the indicator that you gave me. Okay, so then case codes for material SOL. Then we move on to non-material SOL, which you can see is a bit more complicated. Okay, a little bit more complicated. Okay, so let's go on to do that. Non-material SOL. Okay, so we highlight the nature of non-material SOL first. Okay, well, material SOL is quite superficial because what is material SOL? Think about it. Material SOL is, hey, how much money do I have? With this money, how many things can I buy? Then if I can buy this thing, the more things I can buy, the happier and more stroke I feel. That really sums up what material SOL is kind of about, which is very easy to look at because it's more on a superficial level. But non-material SOL is something more holistic. It is something more comprehensive. Okay? Why? Because non-material SOL is asking you, hey, how's the fella's quality of life? Does a person here in this country have a better quality of life than a person in this other country? So we're not asking, hey, is fella rich or not? We're not asking the average fella in this country rich or not, can buy things or not. We're asking, hey, you happy or not? You eating healthy or not? You got good doctors or not? Okay? And you bring in clean air or not? Right, I mean, if you think about it, right? So again, I'm not trying to slander or badmouth any specific country. Hong Kong, very advanced country, right? It's a developed, well, you can't say country. China will slap you for it. So, and it's a recorded lesson. So I would say city. China. Hong Kong is a very advanced and developed city, right? People have pretty reasonably high GDP per capita, means they have pretty high income, right? They have good purchasing power, right? Hey, but then if you think about things in Hong Kong, number one, always protest and riot. Does that add to your happiness or does it worsen your happiness? The protests and riots, does it make your life better or worse? What do you think? Better or worse? Worse. How about the air? How about the air you breathe in? If you know, or you've read, or you've been to Hong Kong, then you know that the air quality is not very good. Air quality is pretty bad in Hong Kong. Does it improve or worsen your standard of living, your quality of life? Worsen. And the other one thing about Hong Kong is that if you read about it, their homes are ridiculously tiny. You are like they call it shoebox apartments. Most people live in shoebox apartments. Typical home in Hong Kong is actually smaller than the size of this castle right now. So if you think about it, that's quite nuts that you're going to include a bedroom, a living room, a toilet, a kitchen, all in this space. And most of the homes are smaller than even this space. So it's quite sad. So yeah, the people have high income and they're pretty good purchasing power, but quality of life, that's something that's a lot more difficult to measure. You got to ask some questions, you got to think a little bit further, you got to look at things from a more comprehensive, more holistic fashion before you can make a conclusion on non-material as well. So that's why we have to highlight that, okay, you want to do a comparison of non-material as well, we need to look at various aspects of quality of life that affects quality of life, like how's the healthcare, how's the education, how's the environment. Environment means pollution, got pollution or not, people stressed or not, happy or not. Ask these questions. That forms up your understanding of non-material as well. So we got to understand what's the nature of non-material as well first before we can even move on to answer what happened with non-material as well. And we are saying that, let me try to give an analogy to tell you how is it like. Okay, it's like, so I ask your parents, can you tell me your kid's PSLE score? And I'm going to use the PSLE score, right, to tell you whether your child is a good person or not. Do you think that's a fair thing to do? Do you think that's a fair? It's like, what's the link? The PSLE score might be an indication of how smart you are or how well you have studied, right? Then it might give an indication of that. Might, but even then, it's quite raw to make the jump. But if I ask you, hey, use PSLE score, tell me this person is a good or bad person. Wow, how can? Using economic data to talk about non-material SL is something like that. It's something along the lines of that. So, but we got to still try lah. We got to try to make absurd jumps lah in logic lah. We got to try. Then of course again later on we're going to criticize it as well. So we say that okay, if you give me a key economic indicator like GDP per capita, well, it tells us very little about non-material. So that is a statement that you have got to declare. You got to point out that you are forcing me to do this. I'm not very happy about doing it, but okay, I will try. They point out that it's very little I can do, it's very little I can say, but I'm going to try. Okay? Now, so what we do is that we say that, okay, we make some theoretical superficial statements like, okay, if the country GDP per capita is going up, the government might be collecting more tax revenue. Because if the country is growing, then the government will be able to collect more personal income tax from the citizens. They'll be able to collect more corporate income taxes from the firms. Then the government got more money. If the government got more money, okay, then they can take this money, go and build better roads, build better public transport system, build better hospitals. So, but that is an assumption that that you are not quite sure that will materialize. So we are just like trying our best to give some theoretical statement. Okay, now and then, but there are a couple of things that should be more or less there lah. Like, but again, still got limitations lah. Like, if you have economic growth, you gotta ask. Maybe people were working harder. That's why they produce more. Then they produce more. They must have had longer working hours. If they have had longer working hours, then how? You have less leisure time. If people were making more money because they were working longer hours, they have less leisure time. If they have less leisure time, your non-material as well would have worsened. But it might not necessarily be the case because it could be technological advancement that led to your income going up. It might be people becoming more productive. So again, we don't know. Economic growth, like in the context of China, from maybe year 2000 to about 2013, 2014, China was developing very rapidly, but its pollution was also very bad. So there is some form of correlation there between growth, because more economic activity and pollution. Then in pollution, how does it affect us? It affects our health. Then we might be worse off for that. Okay, so typically this is what we will say. We say, okay, I've tried my best. These are like some motherhood statements that I can make about how this economic indicator might tell us something about non-material as well. But you're saying that I'm being forced to do this. I feel very stretched when I say this, and I don't even think that all of these are going to be definitely true. It's only a possibility at this juncture. But because if not, I have nothing else to say about how this economic indicator talks to us about non-material as well. So we say this is what we can say, although I'm not confident to say it. This is what we will say. I'm not saying this from like a teaching point. I'm saying this is what you have to write. Okay, this is what you have to write in the exam question. So that's what we will say. Okay. Now, so after you're done with that, then what do? Okay, you tell us that, hey, but your key economic indicators, it doesn't tell us anything at all about these issues. Like, does a regular person have? Okay, first of all, is the quality of healthcare high in the country? I give you two examples. In US, right, the quality of healthcare is very high, for sure. But accessibility is not the same as quality, Healthcare is ridiculously expensive in the United States, if you don't already know. So they have very high quality healthcare, but you must be rich to be able to afford it. That's a pain point. So like they're not quite the same thing. Right? So you need to see accessibility and quality as different things. Singapore has high quality and we have reasonably good accessibility as well. So I think we're quite good on those two areas. Pollution levels, the one you can't tell with the economic indicator one really. Because a country may have very high economic growth, but they might be making a concerted effort to go for green technology, to build on green technology to take care of the environment. Like you see different administrations have different priority in the US, right? So the Trump administration was quite not environmentally friendly. But the first thing that the Biden administration did was to join back the Paris Accord, which prioritizes the environment. So your economic growth really doesn't tell you that much about the pollution levels, right? So that is something that you don't know as well. The accessibility and quality of education. India, pretty much everybody has a bachelor's degree. Some people have a master's degree, and a lot of people actually have PhD degrees. Okay, right? I was chatting with a friend. I think over breakfast a few months ago. My friend, her husband was working in Singapore Airlines. So what's the crazy thing was that she was telling me that the Singapore Airlines, right, employ some customer service officers, the one that answer your phone calls, deal with your inquiries. Then he was telling me that, hey, do you know some of these people, right? So their pay is about like $800 Sing. You know they're PhD holders. He said some of them are PhD holders. PhD holders answering phone calls. Right? So quality of education is not quite the same as accessibility to education. So I think a lot of people in many countries have very good access to education, but how's the quality? And vice versa. So those two things you got to look at. Stress levels correlates to happiness levels, and stress levels can correlate to number of working hours as well. And these things are not things that you are certain about just from looking at the GP per capita. Like a country may have very low GP per capita, but who is to say that people in the country are not happy? You can have very low GDP per capita and be very, very happy people. So this is not something that economic data can tell you. And so you're gonna say that, hey, there's a lot of things that I can't tell just from this indicator alone. You gotta point out what you are unable to derive an understanding of just based on the economic indicator that was fed to you. Okay? Now, so let's move on. Okay, so then again, we do a suggestion. We say, okay, confirm plus chop. Okay, this indicator is going to be inadequate. And if this indicator is going to be inadequate, then I will make suggestions of mine that I will want to use if you were to ask me. So if you are forcing me to do an analysis or comparison of SOL, then I'll ask that you at least give me these other indicators. And I'm going to share with you, if I was a student, what would I write? I don't think some of these things are even taught to you in schools. They won't be in your school textbooks. They will not be in your school textbooks. But I can assure you that you can use these at the A levels and you'll be fine. I can assure you that you might be given extra credit because you're applying and not just reciting from memory. I'll give you an example. Some of your schools will tell you, say, hey, let's use gross national happiness. I'll say bullshit. Man, happiness can measure, man, rubbish. How you measure happiness? Take what is there a happiness meter? Then you take and then you zap a person. Take temperature and then check your happiness level. Got such thing. There's no such device. Hey, if you're trying to measure happiness levels in different countries, all you can do is to get people to do a survey. And I'm going to tell you, Singaporeans will definitely say they're not happy because we are complaining kings and queens. But we might say, oh, we're not very happy. But actually, we are okay. Sometimes what you say might be different from what you feel and what you think. And happiness level is only that changes from day to day, month to month, year to year. How can it be a good benchmark? What's a good benchmark? Working hours. Why? We have all 24 hours a day. Take away the admin time that you use to eat, shower, sleep. Okay, what you're left with is time you use to work and time you use to play. Everybody has the same 24 hours. So the more time you spend working, the less time you spend playing, having leisure time of your own. That surely has an impact on your psychological well-being and therefore affecting your happiness level. I think this is a better benchmark. And you've got to learn how to explain how does the indicator puts across your point in terms of explaining SOL better. PM 2.5 levels, that one is factual one. So you got very high PM 2.5 levels, you're not living a healthy life for sure. And if it's consistently high, then there is a problem in living in this city. And over a long term, you will die young of causes like lung cancer, bronchitis, or lung-related, breathing-related issues, and that's not good. PISA scores. Rather than using literacy rate, hey, we are in what era already? You know what era we are in? We're in the freaking year 2021. If you are comparing a developed country with an undeveloped country, use some common sense. You are comparing developed and developing country. Okay, literacy rate, fine, go ahead. But if you're comparing two developed countries, like you're comparing Korea, South Korea, and Singapore, freaking use PISA score lah. Who is better off? Surely PISA score can. Your math and science scores can help you have a good understanding of whose education levels are better, right? So you can do that. Hey, you know what's the best measurement of healthcare system right now? Wow, that is a new benchmark. Better than life expectancy. Okay, better than infant mortality, better than the amount that you spend on healthcare per capita. Freaking COVID-19 fatality rate. It tells you about the quality of the healthcare. It tells you about the access. It's a comprehensive factor because if your people are not dying from COVID-19, surely that is a measure of your healthcare system ability to cope, right? Okay, so that is a good comprehensive measurement if you ask me. Okay, so in conclusion, what should we do in our conclusion? The first thing I will always do in my conclusion is that I will tell you that most of these questions they start with a trigger word discuss. Okay, discuss something, something, something. When there is a discussion, you should be stating your opinion. What is your opinion? Tell me your true opinion despite all of the things that you say. What do you feel? What say you? Is country X better than country Y? Or are we doing better as a country this year compared to the last year? Are we doing worse as a country this year compared to last year? Why? Why do I feel so? What is my opinion given in a very raw sense? After you state your opinion, you point out that, hey, but that is still my opinion. And my opinion is not perfect. You gotta do that. You gotta point out that. Yeah, you point out that, hey, you give me this one single data, then you want me to try to do a SL comparison just using this one single data. And you know SOL is how comprehensive a thing. You know SOL is how holistic a thing. You know SOL for how many aspects. How can you expect me to use this one single piece of economic data and say something about SOL? I'll say that, hey, you are putting me in a dilemma. There is going to be a huge struggle. Hey, point out why are you struggling? Okay, and then yeah, so I think the third point I already kind of said that. And then of course use some context. You can use some logic to guide your answer. Okay, context means to say that this is one thing that I will ask you to pay attention to. The framework is the same for most of these questions. But if every single essay you are writing a duplicate of the other essay, means like you write the first essay, write the second essay, write the third essay, you find that all three essays you're writing the same, even though it's different exam questions, then you're in big trouble. That shows that you cannot do application. You need to learn how to do application. How to do application? You need to apply context. You need to exercise some discretion. You got to tell us, if you know, I'm quite sure what happened is this. SOL has actually improved. SOL has achieved worse. And later I'll show you a sample of what we did in class this week. So I'll show you a sample of what we did this week to show you what context do I mean. Okay? So I'll show you after class. So just let me finish up. So I think we're done already. This is the conclusion that we will write. Okay? Now, so let me share with you all about classes at ETG. Even our own students, if you're only just joining us this year, I might not have had time to do an admin explanation of what kind of help you can receive here. So even if you're a student, you're already a student, okay, you can sit in and listen to this. I won't take too long to explain this. Okay? Right, so if you don't really know about ETG classes, right, ETG students, right, they can book any class they want. So we are not the traditional sense of tuition centers that you understand. In the traditional sense, tuition centers, what you do is that I say, oh, I want to join the Wednesday 5:30 p.m. class. Then you are stuck. Every week you do the same. You go for the same class. Hey, we are not primary school and we're not secondary school. You're in JC. In JC, you have a very foundation schedule. You have CCAs, you have extra lessons, you have all the whatnot. And your schedule might change time to time. And sometimes you just want to have some me time. Okay, so because of that, we don't have a fixed class schedule, meaning to say that, I have a fixed class schedule, you don't. You can pick any class to book. And there will always be classes for you to book because our class timings available is a demand and supply thing. The more demand there is, the more timings are open throughout the entire year. So as more students join us, more timings become available. You book what works for you. Okay, so that is the flexibility in terms of classes. Also, another kind of flexibility is that we have I think how many times more students? We have 4 times more students online today with us compared to the students in the classroom. Okay, so again, this is something that we give to our students. You have the option always to switch to Zoom for that week if you find that that is more beneficial and that is better for you for that specific week. Okay, I'm just going to show you a snapshot of some of the resources. This is like a quarter of the resources that we have. Tuition centers don't typically do this, but I'm going to show you what we do. This is like a quarter of the resources that we have because not all resources are available at this point because some are out of print. Hey, every term School term, we go by the school term. Every term we issue a new textbook. So for J2s, we just issued this term, volume 5. The textbooks are used in class. Okay, so like the notes are all here. We don't issue you like loose worksheets every week. You bring the same textbook every week for that term. So we give you this, right? Every single term, it changes. Orange is for J1, blue is for J2. Okay, so like you can see outside lah. What yellow is for H1 students. So H1 students even get their own textbook. H1 students get their own textbook. Hey, this is not right. So there are like 9 volumes, and then towards exam period, right, we have volume 8A, A and B volumes. A are all like the questions. B are all the answers. When you finish that term, we will give you the B booklet, so you don't need to like write down in a very, I don't know, some of your handwriting quite bad lah. Yeah, so we print out for you nicely the B volume. So this is the A volume, 8A, 7A. Okay, do I have a B volume here? Let me see if I have a B volume here. This is the B volume. The B volume is all the answers to the A volumes. It's all printed out nicely for you. Okay, so these J1's ones are orange in color, J2 is blue in color, H1 is yellow in color. And of course, some of you came for this today, okay, which is an express series. So at ETG, right, what we do here, right, is that we answer to your wishes. So when students make a complaint and say that, oh, school notes, sometimes they're very clunky. Clunky means too much info, don't know what to study. Then like too much material. So the express series, as it suggests, right, is actually all the key concepts in macro and all the key concepts in micro. Sorry, this is macro and this is micro. All the key concepts in micro and macro, we cover everything, but in concise fashion. So you read straight away, you understand. It's like in short. Everything is in short. So it's a very short explanation of that specific concept for every single major topic. It's all inside. Okay, right, so that's that. Then students complain, wow, so many diagrams to learn in J1 for micro. Then we put in all the diagrams that you need to learn. Every single diagram you need to learn. I put it here, and the explanation for the type grade. That is the micro diagrams book. Last year J1, because they complained that COVID-19 disrupted their learning, and they find that they're going to flunk their promos. I did this in 1 week, okay, and issued this 2 weeks before promos. So this is like a guidebook to deal with your promo exams. Like everything you need to know to at least pass your promos. So I did this for the students last year. Then students complain the TYS answers that they find popular, some like a bit wrong, some a bit too lengthy. Then they ask me, you got your own version? I say, no, I don't have. Okay, you all ask. Again, 1 week. I wrote out everything and I printed. Hey, we don't charge students for this one. But if you're a student, we do it because you ask for it. If enough students say the same thing, then there must be an issue that you're struggling with. Then we do it. We printed this. This is a concise TYS guide. This was last year, end of the year. 20 questions we covered. This is all the essence of all the school prelim papers for the year 2020. So we covered 20 questions in 1 day. Right? And then of course, these are our fan favorite cheat sheets. This one cheat sheets, pocket size. Okay, so we printed originally this. Then students say actually they like the size, but then I thought about it. If you like the size, then you like the even smaller size. So then we printed the baby version of it. Okay, so these are stuff that we print out every other month. So every 2 months we print a new one that recaps what the concepts learned. Then of course, these are the ones that are available at Xingli, okay, or popular, right? 50 helpful micro and macro essays. This one you can buy. The only tool that you can buy is this. Okay, and we only put it up for sale is because so that you know that it's not that I cannot publish books. I can, but I want to publish it for my own students only. Right, so that's why I only publish these two. Okay. Then when you do attend crash courses with us, like we don't give you loose worksheets for crash courses. We give you like the entire book with the answers inside. So when you attend a crash course, we give you a crash course booklet that has all the answers to everything that you study, so that you don't need to copy anything down. Everything's there. Okay, right. So these are like the materials. I confirm plus chop. You cannot find these materials elsewhere. Any other tuition centers don't have. Okay, right. Then students always have my number. They can WhatsApp. You need any help? Just show me a WhatsApp. I'll try my best to answer, even though I might answer only late at night because that's when I'm free. Okay, you can also schedule a one-to-one consult with me if you need to, right? That includes all the students who need a consult now. You can go and read about me. I'm quite well known, right? I'm a teacher in India, and I fought a $2 million court case and won. Okay, right. So you can always approach me. My students, they have my mobile number. They got any questions, they can always ask me. All right. The last thing that I will say before I go to the essay that we were covering this week, last thing I will say is that we always deliver results. Now, this is not a claim that we make lightly. Most of the tuition centers out there, they will use this claim, oh, how many percent A's we have, how many percent B's we have. Mostly they'll say, oh, we've got 70%, 80%, 90% A's. To me, I find that unless you can back these claims up with data, actual data of students who are willing to prove it to you, I think it's all bullshit. Okay, but if you go to our website, you can find more than 2,000 handwritten testimonials, Google reviews, Facebook reviews, and some video testimonials. Then you'll find that this can't be fake one. There are so many. You get a handwriting expert to come in to read the ones that are handwritten. You can go and see the authenticity of the Google reviews. You can't create that many accounts to fake, and they all have like some of them are they created reviews for other restaurants and whatsoever. Okay, so I will ask you to exercise some common sense, which is what we're actually trying to teach today through today's framework as well. It's a little bit of common sense if you think about it. Okay, to exercise some discretion, right? Check out the quality and quality of our student testimonials to see what students say about our classes that are true or not, instead of believing raw statistics that they can't prove. Okay, and you can see how our program is structured across the 2 years. If you want to take a look at our program, I can show you the class, right? So okay, so if you are keen to register, you can just go to tuitiongenius.com/register and register. For now, I'm going to go back to what we covered this week in class. I'm going to show you the essay about how we contextualize, how we do a context for an essay. Okay, so let me just open it up. Just give me a minute. Okay, so this is a very specific essay that we covered this week. And for our J2 students, we already covered this week, but if we have not covered it, later 1 p.m. class, we're covering this thing. So I'll just go through. I'm not covering it because I already covered it in my regular class, but I'm just going to show you what does contextualizing mean. So if you look at how my answer went, right? So, when I say a point, like this point is very theory. Then my next point is going to be applied. I'll say, hey, look, why did our GDP growth contract? It was because of COVID-19. It was because of circuit breaker. How did this affect our SOL in Singapore? So I'm talking about specifically Singapore because of COVID-19, what happened and how did it affect the USOL. So you read the points that we wrote there. This is not like a typical essay. That is contextualizing. The framework can be the same. But contextualizing is another method. So you got to contextualize, you got to add in what happened. Okay, and do application. The same thing here, when we talk about non-material SOL, same thing. The first part is a theoretical thing. When you lose income, you feel stressed. This is something anyone can say. But if we were covering something relating to Singapore in 2020, because that was what the question was talking about, we'll say that, hey, circuit breaker, everybody stay at home. You got more leisure time. Then they say that, hey, also the government forced people to work from home, then all of these issues led to less congestion. Hey, you got more time, you save time, don't travel so much. Then they say all this led to more leisure time. So non-material SOL is tempered. Like you expect SOL to overall fall, but the non-material SOL, there's some balancing act there, like there's some improvement, there's some worsening and there's some improvement. So we point that out. That is also applied. That is contextualizing. Then at the end, you see how we contextualize and say that, yeah, I mean, like, if you ask me for sure, so you see my opinion, you see the second point was my opinion. I gave an opinion. I said, in all likelihood, I'm quite sure SOL fell. That's my opinion. In all likelihood, SOL fell. Then I add on the part, I say that, I say that it could have been worse if not for the government $100 billion stimulus. So I say that it could have been worse. So that's a little bit of evaluation and contextualizing that. Okay, so when you write something, you cannot just theory. Using framework is something that is theoretical. a framework by itself, it is theoretical. So you cannot, if you apply framework in just 100% theory form, then you're gonna get L2, and you're gonna get low mid L2. Then you cannot blame me. You say, hey, you teach a framework, then you get L2. No, you need to input the context. If not, then how can every single essay be the same exact question? You use the framework, you exercise some flexibility to add in context. Okay? Right, so we are done with today's lesson, today's supplement lesson. Okay, so if you've got any questions, you can ask me after class. So that's all I have for you all today. Okay, got a copy of this. Okay, so I can stay for 5 to 10 minutes if any students or what's online or offline want to ask me any question before let me know if you got any questions. So if you have no questions, then I will for my students I'll see you all next week or later on if you are not attended this week's class. You can just get a copy of the Micro Express. Yeah. You have any questions? You want? Okay, so I can show you our program. So if you take a look here, right? Currently we are in this week, which is 18 January. This is a week of 18 January. What we're doing in class was what I was telling you about. We're doing living standards and this. But because there's a very content heavy lesson. And I feel that students will benefit from knowing how to do the executions relating to this topic. That's why there's an additional supplement class. Okay, which is what we're actually at right now. The supplement class are always highlighted here in the code SCP. That stands for supplement class. So every now and then you see a supplement class. So it's not like wow, I randomly create a supplement class as a teacher. It's the other way around. is that I felt that this supplement class students can attend even if they have no knowledge of what happened that week. So I said, okay, you can come and try out the class. So that's a supplement class. Okay, but at the start of the year, the lessons will always be content heavy, content. But later on, when you're nearing exam period, you will be actually very essay and case study. See, essay, see, essay, see, case study, see, essay. Yeah, so we change gears depending on the situation. So we are very strategic about what we do. At the start of the year, we will always do more content. Again, because without content, how to do application? So you must have some content. Okay, so then in addition to that, your supplement classes will always be practices. Right? And we can go down. They can go down to sometime in May, June. So you see that when we go into May, June period, we are going to deal with your prelims already. We will have finished our curriculum in mid-May. So mid-May we finish our curriculum localization. Done. Then after that is all revision already. So you see, essay practice, case study, essay, then skills workshop. And after that, in July we start with revision. Very topical focused revision. Okay? So like in July, the revision is focused on micro. Because we will have thrown it away by then. Okay, we spend half the day doing macro, we throw away our micro. So we come back to look at micro on an individual topical basis. So micro. Then after that, just 1 month before prelims, we go back to revision mode so that you can hold your prelims with confidence. Then after that, we go on to look at micro. Go back to revise micro topics. Right? So every single lesson is actually properly planned on. Like many batches of students have gone through this, so we know that it works to help our students do well. Okay. Any other questions? It's ongoing one, but right now actually for those students who are J2 and they're signing up, we charge J1 rate until 31st Jan. So starting 1st Feb, we charge J2 rate, and J2 rate is significantly higher than J1 rate. Yeah, so that is the fundamental difference. So for students who go and join us before J, because now we technically don't have J1. Not that we don't have, we have a bunch of J1s already join us at each other, but we technically don't have J1s yet because by right your J1s are going to start school in Feb, first week of Feb. So we treat it as that we still give you a J1 rate. We still give you the preferential J1 rate. When the J1s actually start class, then we got to distinguish between who is J1 and J2 already. J1 will pay J1 rate, J2 will pay proper J2 rate. But when you join in groups of 3 or group of 4, there's some group discount there. So you can bring your friends along to join if you really want to join and enjoy a lower fee. Then all these core plus classes and supplement classes, they are all included. That means regardless of which plan you sign up for, it's all included. So I guess the one fundamental difference that students actually don't quite realize is that let me move on to show you. So as you see, we always have these supplement classes, and these supplement classes are not always open to external. Today one happens. When we put it in blue, we are opening up to external students. But you see, there are a lot in white. They are not open to external students. Okay. So the supplement classes, if you think about you join normal tuition, right? You pay every lesson. Ours we pay by week, which is similar to every lesson, but if you got 2 lessons in weeks, the extra lessons you don't pay for it. So you get extra hours. And then during exam season, there is core plus lesson. Core plus lesson means on top of the regular lesson that week, you have an extra core plus lesson. There is sometimes 4 hours long. So like this one, this is 4 hours long, and it's free. You don't pay extra. So this to help students deal with the exams. So when we design program, we don't design program based on you know how much money you want to charge. Like we know we charge the extra lesson, then the more we pay. No, if we feel that you need the extra lesson, we make it such that you're still paying the same price, so you don't actually pay more just because you're getting extra lessons. Right. Okay. Right. So that's the program. Okay, any other questions? Yeah. Okay, so let me show you. So let's just talk about this week's class. This week's class, there is an in-class assignment, there's an essay, which was the essay they were talking about just now that you saw. Then before they actually are shown the answer, I tell them to do it. They are supposed to upload it. When they upload it, I will grade. Okay, not everything is graded by myself. Some of the stuff are graded by my team, by my academics team, but they are full-time tutors. Right, so some of the things are graded by them, but these are all graded. That's one. Two, during exam period, we have homework program. So let me show it to you. So we have a homework program when it's nearing exam season. So like, basically, you can submit, and then you can see the answers. Submit and then see the answers. So then you'll be graded. The numbers there that you see are the amount of assignments that are not graded for last year. And not graded not because we didn't grade them, it's because they submitted beyond the deadline. So we don't mark if you submit beyond the deadline. And we are quite generous with the deadline, so you have to stay fixed with the deadline. You cannot like, before A-level 1 week, then you go and submit 20 assignments. So that nobody will mark it up. There's nobody around and available to mark. Yeah. So we give you a specific homework program, then we tell you you have to finish by this specific week. We finish by this specific week, we will grade it for you, return it to you with comments. Then all the tests, I will show you the tests. Like if you were a J1 student last year and you did mock promo, okay, so same thing, I'll show it to you. You see? So if you did a promo exam, I will actually grade it. I'll grade it, I'll send it back to you in PDF form. Then I'll also give you a grade there. So yes, we do. The answer to that is that we do. We don't mark your own school personal assignments. That's something that we don't do, no time. But if you come and schedule a consult with me, I will mark it on the spot. So you cannot like, just pass me something else, me help you mark it. You come for a consult, I have you mark on the spot. I tell you how to improve. That is something that is helpful. As opposed to you send me stuff, then we don't even talk. How would that be helpful? Right? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if you don't have any other questions, I'm going to end the Zoom session here, okay? Because this is recorded, I don't want to take the Zoom session to drag too long. Okay, so I'll see the students online. If you have any question, you can drop me on WhatsApp. Okay, my number is 81823036. If you have any questions, you can just let me know.